New expansion. Cool. Alright. Looks like they added a bunch of new options. I'm probably just gonna go with default resources on this one, though. I usually prefer biters off so there's no time pressure, but I want to mostly default experience the first time through. I've already played Factorio enough by now, I'm sure I can handle it. We are going to turn off enemy expansion and cliffs though, otherwise this game can feel a little claustrophobic. Looks like this seed is giving me plenty of room. I think I'll just leave water as is. So my only major goal here is to finish the game, but I'm also hoping to explore the new options and get a good feel for what's possible now with all the new tech. But let's at least start by getting through the base game. You may notice the lack of coal rocks. Yeah, unfortunately I'll have to mine coal manually. Recipes in the expansion remain largely unchanged in the early game, but some of them don't show up until you craft or mine certain items. Burner City is also the same. Get some iron smelting, then start building a coal snake, then toss a drill on stone for furnaces, and finally copper. Once burners are up and running, it's time to research automation. Handcraft a tiny power plant and 10 red science, and then get researching. A simple direct insertion setup really speeds things up at the start. Assemblers, inserters, belts and undergrounds, and electric drills are all good candidates. Fortunately, they use a lot of the same resources, so they can share. In fact, assemblers and drills take the exact same resources, so I start with making assemblers and then switch to drills later. Also, because I'm playing with biters enabled, I'm going to need some gun turrets. Because I can see a couple biter bases to the north, a few gun turrets defending power and my main area should be enough to start. The early game in Factorio is largely just about hand feeding to get some basic supplies, until you have enough to automate the process. A handful of electric drills, inserters, belts, and furnaces should be enough to get things properly automated. You may be noticing by now, I'm not the fastest Factorio player. I have ADHD, so I get easily distracted, and I find starting larger builds especially daunting. I'll often spend hours just watching the base. Unfortunately, that can be problematic when playing with biters on. This one set of turrets gets attacked a bunch before I finally take out the biter base. A small lab setup with direct insertion means I can keep research going until I can automate it later. It's about time we get coal automated. A few drills should be enough to run power for now. I should probably deal with that. I prefer to future-proof things where it makes sense. Building the miners like this means I can have more on the ore patch later. Next is iron. Create a simple blueprint like this to save yourself some time. The easiest way I've found to start transitioning away from burners is to set up very simple iron smelting with hand-fed coal. This means I can start cleaning up the burners. I queue up Military 1 for machine gun, lamps, radars, steel, and armor. I have a bad habit of not using the things I research until way later, so I should have just delayed lamps and armor here. Alright, that's enough. Time to go kill nests. Looks like they added new achievements. Yellow ammo is so bad, I eventually just start punching the nest instead. Time to start planning out our smelting stacks. Ah, crap, really? Looks like the biters managed to take out the gun turrets protecting my power. Now they're starting to chew on my steam engines. I guess I need more turrets here. I'll deal with the biters later. I'm sure it'll be fine. I think everyone eventually settles on a smelting stack design that they like. I prefer to set mine up this way, with inserters putting coal on the outside lanes, as it makes routing the belts a lot more straightforward. Yellow inserters are enough to keep up with full smelting stacks, even after upgrading to steel furnaces, since they use fuel at the same rate as stone furnaces. There is a bit of a delay as the inserters slowly fill the belts and furnaces, but it does eventually catch up. I'm starting with 3 smelting lanes, 2 for iron and 1 for copper, which will allow me to get an early mall set up, as well as supply red and green science. The initial plan for this starter base is to follow along with my There Is No Spoon base I did ages ago, which was based on the guide Nephrem's made. Currently my only goal is to set up all the novice sciences and then launch a rocket, so this should hopefully be good enough. I suspect I'll have to make adjustments as I go though, as that base made no considerations for defense, and there will be new requirements for setting up my first space platform that I haven't accounted for. Now, I could do some searching through the research and try to plan ahead for those things, but I don't feel like it. That's the great thing about this game, nothing has to be permanent. I'll just fix it later. Also, these biters are really starting to get on my nerves. At some point, I'm going to have to set up some proper defenses. That's the unfortunate reality of starting in a desert. The lack of trees means pollution spreads quickly. I suppose I could have picked a seed with more trees in the starting area, but they can be a real pain to build around. It's probably less effort to deal with the trees than the biters, but oh well. Later on, I'm going to need more smelting for iron and steel, so I'm setting this up to make that easier. This isn't a very big iron patch, so this is probably overkill, but it's easy enough to fix later. Smelting for iron and copper are 1-to-1 recipes. 1 lane of iron ore on either side with the output down the middle is a typical setup. Yellow belts move 15 items per second, which is 7.5 per lane, and stone furnaces will produce 1 iron every 3.2 seconds, so if you do the math, each lane can support 24 stone furnaces. I like to put my inserters next to each other like this, as it makes it much faster to place a bunch of them. Now that iron is automated, we can finally get rid of the burner coal. When ore patches are this close together, it's okay to do a little mixed mining. Just add a filter splitter before merging it into the rest of the supply, and be sure to prioritize using the byproduct when you merge it into its own supply. Nice and simple copy-paste. These old furnaces can go. and now I think it's about time to start our mall setup. I'm starting with gears and circuits. 2 gear assemblers for red science, and then a few more for direct insertion to the various items we need should be fine. I'm setting up belts and inserters here first. These will be for personal use to start, but I'll feed them into green science shortly. The nice thing about this layout is that it's a very simple way to get both an early game mall and also start up red and green science. For the circuits, I'm just doing 1-to-1 direct insertion, as I don't need many. Upgrade the wire assemblers later to get the proper 3-to-2 ratio. Also, in a number of places, I'll either need 2 yellow inserters to keep up, or I'll need to upgrade the inserters to blue when I get them. One major trap new players fall into, myself included, is trying to build your starter base as though it's going to stay there forever. Build the basics you need at this point in the game. Feel free to add a bit of extra processing so you can add more to the mall later, but don't overdo it. This area is going to get very crowded, so you're going to be setting things up again elsewhere. Also, I've learned through experience not to overdraw too much from these early builds. Just set up new smelting and basic materials again later as you need them. Our only goal here is basic science and automated supplies. You'll notice the red and green science lanes are uneven. This is intentional. They don't craft at the same rate, so I don't need as many red assemblers. We're just going to place a basic lab setup down here. I'll eventually add on to it later. Next up, I want to get some ammo and turrets automated. All the materials we need are nearby, so this should be easy. Ah yes, the biters seem displeased. Let's be sure to give them a warm welcome the next time they file a complaint. This spot is kind of awkward. I'll just have to mix mine again. Here I'm trying to decide what to research next. Most of the available techs are either only a small improvement or just convenience at this point. I eventually decide I want to improve my ability to deal with biters. I probably don't need both the damage upgrade and red ammo, but now that science is automated, they'll both finish fast. Also, steel furnaces save a ton on fuel, and larger electric poles make building a lot easier. Especially since the small ones depend on wood, which, if you haven't noticed, there isn't very much of. I don't need this old lab anymore. Now that I'm researching grenades, red ammo, and military science, I'm thinking about how I want to lay them out. The conclusion I came to is that I need to go clear more biters. Well, at least that's one more problem out of the way. I'm going to adjust my maul a bit. I want to set up some dedicated gears on the other side of the circuits belt. In this case, an easy way to do that is to just sideload them. Since Green Science is using our old belt and inserter assemblers, I'm setting up some new ones here. This also means I'll have splitters, undergrounds, and the other inserter types automated now. With that, we can now start scaling up. We need automation too soon, as only Mark II or better assemblers allow a fluid input. Engines allow us to work toward fluid handling in Blue Science soon. It's about time we get the rest of the iron and copper patches hooked up as well. And another biter attack. Let's go knock out these bases. A very effective way to take out bases in the early to mid-game is turret creep. Bind gun turrets and ammo to easy-to-reach buttons, that way you can just toss a line of turrets down and quickly insert some ammo with the Z key. Do this a few times as you work your way through the base. This is how I'm going to be taking care of biters for a while, so I'll stop showing base clearing for the time being. Just assume I'm clearing bases as they become problematic. It's finally time to start working toward Blue Science. This starts with fluid handling and oil gathering, as well as a car to make exploration easier. I'm also going to pick up Logistics 2 and solar panels here in preparation for later base upgrades. Circuit network isn't mandatory to manage fluids, but it is certainly helpful given how fluid mechanics have changed in 2.0. Prior to the update, it was entirely possible to balance oil cracking just by routing the cracked product back around to before the outputs from the oil refineries, which naturally prioritized the cracking output. This meant no circuit conditions were necessary. Now, however, all machines output into one shared inventory of fluids, so it's no longer quite so easy to keep things balanced. Instead, we'll use a circuit condition to turn a pump on or off, which will allow us to control whether the cracking is running based on how much of the input is in the system. I tend to prefer simpler, more elegant solutions to problems like this, as they tend to require less troubleshooting later. This is the one thing that I think is worse about the 2.0 update. Basically everything else is an upgrade. Another build I see new players struggle with is steel smelting. It's simple enough to just insert the iron directly from another furnace, and a bit of clever belting means we can keep using the same coal setup. Stone and steel furnaces are too small to fit 2 inserters and still have room for power, so we can just leave a gap between the belts here. Then at the end, we use this technique to only allow one side of the output belt to sideload, and then combine them, creating a single belt of steel while filtering out the coal. Conveniently, we can just drag a row of inserters on the output side, and then use our previous technique for placing inserters quickly to reverse the direction of half of them. Now that I have steel, I can set up a temporary red ammo assembler. This, along with the damage upgrades, should make clearing biters easier. There's a small patch of iron over here that's kind of awkward. May as well connect it up. Next up is bricks. I start building a full stack and then realize I don't need that many bricks and remove half of it. The ratio is probably different here, but I didn't bother to check, so this may still be overbuilt. With steel and bricks, we now have everything we need to work on military science. One wall assembler should be enough to supply science and give me walls for defense. A handful of grenade assemblers and a better red ammo setup, and we're done with military science. What's that? I said blue science was next? I have ADHD, remember? This lab setup will eventually support 3 input belts. I'm just making space for the extra inserters now. Setting up Mark II assemblers is pretty simple. As I mentioned earlier, these are necessary when dealing with fluid inputs, but I can also use these to speed up production where needed. Automating repair packs seems like overkill, but you'd be surprised how much you use these things. I'm honestly not sure why I didn't set up power pole automation earlier. These will become obsolete pretty soon, but oh well. Look at all of these trees. This landscape is so green, isn't it? Gorgeous. Where is he taking this ammo? Could it be? Defenses? Jokes aside, I'm getting really fed up with fending off biters and manually supplying ammo. As much as I don't like boxing myself in, having a proper defensive wall keeps me from spending as much time thinking about biters. It does take some effort to set up, but it's worth it. even just for the peace of mind. Also, it's not that hard to extend the walls later. In my opinion, gun turrets are the easiest thing to set up and maintain for the early game. Most other solutions require active maintenance or tech we don't have yet. Other reasonable options would be mines, flamethrower turrets, or laser turrets. Mines are a major pain without bots. Flamethrower turrets require oil, and laser turrets are quite a ways off still. Generally, I just stick to gun turrets until I have bots to repair the walls, and sufficient power to support the lasers. You'll notice that I set a limit on how much ammo each turret can pick up. By default, the turrets will maintain roughly 10 magazines, which means it would take a very long time to saturate the full defensive wall. By limiting the amount per turret, we ensure that all of the turrets get at least some ammo right away. The last thing we need is to set this wall up and immediately have part of it destroyed just because the ammo hasn't gotten that far down the belt yet. Also, I go back and forth about the tier of inserters I use a lot. It probably doesn't matter enough to spend time thinking about it. Yellow inserters are cheaper to make and use less power if they run infrequently, but honestly, it's such a small difference that it only really matters in challenge runs. Steel furnaces are a really nice upgrade at this point in the game. They're relatively cheap to make, the most expensive component being the steel itself, since we don't build tons of steel otherwise. Since steel furnaces are the same size as brick furnaces, they are a direct drop-in replacement. Steel furnaces consume fuel at the same rate as a brick furnace, while smelting at twice the speed. In other words, they literally use half as much fuel per item created as brick furnaces. Obviously, it's easy enough to set up more coal mining, but we can stretch the lifespan of our starting coal by switching to steel furnaces as they are crafted. Sadly, steel furnaces don't have module slots, so we won't be able to take advantage of added productivity later without building a new smelting setup. That said, they're absolutely worth using in the meantime, in my opinion. Also, once we have red belts in sufficient quantity, we can simply upgrade the input and output belts in our smelting stacks to match the added throughput of the steel smelters. It's really nice that the ratios work out exactly. Since we'll be setting up oil soon, I need to automate pipes. May as well include steam engines. I'm also going to craft some pump jacks by hand for now. On the right side of my base, I've set up new smelting stacks for iron and copper. These are going to feed the green chips used to make red chips. As I said earlier, it's best to just forget that you've already set these up before. I don't want to draw from the same build, otherwise blue science will be competing with my mall and red and green science for resources. These extra wire assemblers will feed red chips shortly. I'm setting up engines here which will feed directly into the blue science assemblers. Down here will be where I build electric engines for future use. Red chips will go on the right. At this point, we need a few different oil products, so it's time to go find a patch. I remember seeing a decent patch up here to the north. Ah, here it is. We're just going to defend this patch with hand-fed gun turrets for now. Once we get this properly up and running, it's easy enough to switch over to flamethrower turrets, since they can be fed directly by the patch itself, don't require power, unlike the inserters for automated gun turrets, and we can just prioritize the flamethrower turrets before sending the oil to production. We'll just quickly drag the oil back to our base and continue preparing blue science. One important change in 2.0 is that pumps are now required in order to break up long pipelines into smaller segments. This is slightly annoying, but really not a big deal. Just throw a pump down in the line and drag power to it. I don't have any buildings that use the oil yet, so I'll just quickly set up flamethrower turrets, refineries, and chem plants. I can just toss the flamethrower turrets at the end of the line of engines since they use the same inputs plus the engines themselves. The refineries and chem plants can go up here since the inputs are nearby, and there's really no other good use for this space. This does take a bit of spaghetti to fit in though. For the red chips, I'm actually going to need 2 rows of assemblers. Also, this area of the base is a bit different than the example I'm working off of, but that's nothing a bowl of spaghetti can't solve. Is anyone else getting hungry? Generally at this point, you need way more petroleum than light or heavy oil, so I'm just going to set up 2 of them to later convert to advanced oil processing, and the rest will be the simple variant. This will keep me from needing to set up cracking for a while. I'm just going to quickly add radars to the mall while I'm thinking about it, now that the base is getting more spread out. To start, we only need 1 chem plant for sulfur and a few for plastic. I'll add more later if I need them. The sulfur needs water, so let's go grab that. One nice thing about the fluid system is that we don't have to worry about setting up multiple pipelines for a single fluid. As an example, I can just add a second offshore pump to this pipe, and the same pipeline will carry the extra fluid. If the pipeline gets too long, you can have multiple regular pumps in parallel to maintain throughput. We don't need that much water right now, though. If you ever had any doubts about my ADHD, when I come back to the game the next day I get completely distracted from blue science. So close, yet so far. It's at this point that I decide I want to extend my walls all the way around my main base. This takes quite a while to do by hand, so enjoy this build montage, I guess. Now that that's over, we can finally get back to the task at hand. Plastic needs coal, and we're running dangerously low on coal. In fact, if we don't get more coal mining set up soon, we could run out of power as well. There's a nice sized coal patch here to the northwest of my base, so let's get this set up. I'm going to use the same blueprint here. Now we can see the real strength of turning on snapping. It's super easy to quickly cover a patch in miners. Since miners output at half an ore per second and a yellow belt can move 15 items per second, we need 30 miners to fully saturate a belt. Or, put another way, this patch needs at least 4 yellow belts to carry all of its output. We don't necessarily need to perfectly balance the belts here, especially since the game runs better if belts are fully saturated with a single material. I've found that the easiest way to do this is to just do a few diagonals of splitters like this. Using priority in and out on the same side of the splitter makes sure that we always fill the bottom belt first, then work our way up. This also happens to drain one side of the patch faster than the rest, but that's not a huge deal. To defend this patch, we're going to drag over the oil pipe and use flamethrower turrets. You really don't need a ton of these, and honestly this is probably overkill. I just really don't want to have to come fix the walls too much, so I'd rather the biters die faster and not get the chance to damage the walls. Also, I tend to prefer these angled corners, since sharp corners have a tendency to take a lot more damage. Since we don't have gun turrets right up against the wall, we have room to do that here. As for where we're taking the coal, we'll start by bringing it down next to the power, so we can easily prioritize that. Then we'll split some off to supplement the smelting fuel and finally bring a belt down to the plastic. Now that we have blue science on the way, we can research our way toward bots. And there we go. Plastic is done. Oops. The blue science rolls in, and with that, we're going to call it here. If you've made it this far, thank you. This is part 1 in what I expect to be a 5 or 6 part series. The plan is to finish up the novice sciences and set up a space platform or 2 in the next video, and hopefully be ready for the next planet. I'm sure you noticed that this video is heavily edited, and I'm very new to editing, so this took me quite a while to make. I've learned a lot, and I'm hoping the next one will be even better. Feel free to subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and I hope to see you there.